Foreword of the Blue Envelope. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Dawn Larson in Minnesota. The Blue Envelope by Roy J. Snell. Foreword. When considering the manuscript of The Blue Envelope, my publishers wrote me asking that I offer some sort of proof that the experiences of Marian and Lucille might really have happened to two girls so situated. My answer ran somewhat as follows. Alaska, at least the northern part of it, is so far removed from the rest of this old earth that it is almost as distinct from it as is the moon. It's a good, stiff, 9-day trip to it by water, and you sight land only once in all that 9 days. For 9 months of winter you are quite shut off from the rest of the world. Your mail comes once a month, letters only, over an 1,800-mile dog trail, 2 months and a half for letters to come, the same for the reply to go back. Do you wonder, then, that the Alaskan, when going down to Seattle, does not speak of it as going to Seattle or going down to the States, but as going outside? Going outside seems to just exactly express it. When you have spent a year in Alaska, you feel as if you had truly been inside something for 12 months. People who live inside of Alaska do not live exactly as they might were they in New England. Conventions for the most part disappear. Life is a struggle for existence and a bit of pleasure now and again. If conventions and customs get in the way of these, away with them. And no one in his right senses can blame these people for living that way. One question we meet, and probably it should be answered. Would two lone girls do and dare the things that Lucille and Marian did? My only answer must be that girls of their age, girls from outside at that, have done them. Helen C., a 16-year-old girl, came to Cape Prince of Wales to keep house for her father, who was superintendent of the reindeer herd at that point. She lived there with her father and the natives, no white woman about, for 2 years. During that time her father often went to the herd, which was grazing some 40 miles from the Cape, and stayed for a week or 2 at a time, marking deer or cutting them out to send to market. Helen stayed at the Cape with the natives. At times in the spring, unattended by her father, she went walrus hunting with the natives in their 30-foot sailing skin boat and stayed out with them for 30 hours at a time, going 10 or 12 miles from land and sailing into the very midst of a school of 500 or more walrus. This, of course, was not necessary, just a part of the fun a healthy girl has when she lives in an Eskimo village. Beth N., a girl of 19, came to keep house for her brother, the government teacher on Shishmaref Island, a small sandy island off the shore of Alaska, some 75 miles above Cape Prince of Wales. She had not been with her brother long when a sailing schooner anchored offshore. This schooner had on board their supply of winter food. Her brother went on board to superintend the unloading. The work had scarcely begun when a sudden storm tore the schooner from her moorings and sent her whirling southward through the straits. For some 10 or 12 days Beth was on that barren, sandy island entirely alone. The natives were, at this time of the year, off fishing up one of the rivers of the mainland. She did not have as much as a match to light a fire. She had no sort of notion as to how or when her brother would return. The fact of the matter was that had not her brother had in his possession a note from the captain asking him to come aboard, and had he not known the penalty for not returning a landsman to his port under such conditions, the unprincipled seaman would have carried him to Seattle, leaving Beth to shift for herself. He reached home on a gasoline schooner some 10 days after his departure. This same Beth, when spring came and she wished to go outside, engaged a white guide to take her by dog team to Cape Prince of Wales, where the mail steamer might be caught. It was late in the spring and the ice was soft. They had been traveling for some time on the rough shore ice when they discovered, much to their horror, that their ice pan had broken loose from the shore and was drifting out to sea. They hurried along the edge of it for some distance in the hope of finding a bridge to shore. In this they were disappointed. Beth could not swim. Fortunately, the guide could. Leaping into the stinging water, he swam from one cake to the next one, leading the dogs. Beth clung to the back of the sled and was thus brought ashore. After wading many swollen torrents, they at last reached Cape Prince of Wales in safety. This sounds very much like fiction, but is fact and can be verified. As to crossing Bering Straits and living with the Chukches in Siberia, I did that very thing myself. Went with a crew of Chukches I had never seen, too. I was over there for only 3 days, but might have stayed the summer through in perfect safety. While there I saw a character known as the French Kid, a white man who had crossed the straits with the natives late in the year and had wintered there. Crossing 20 or more miles of floe ice might seem a trifle improbable, but here, too, actual performance bears me out. I sent the mail to Thompson, the government teacher on the little Diomede Island, across 22 miles of floe ice by an Eskimo. This man had made the trip many times before. It is my opinion that what an Eskimo can do, any white man or hardy young woman can do. Well, there you have it. I don't wish to make my fiction story seem tame, or I might tell you more. As it is, I hope I may have convinced you that all the adventures of Lucile and Marian are probable, and that the author knows something about the wonderland in which this story is set. The Author. The Blue Envelope, Chapter 1. A Mysterious Disappearance. At the center of a circular bay, forming a perfect horseshoe with a sandy beach at its center and a rocky cliff on either side, two girls were fishing for shrimps. The taller of the two, a curly-haired, red-cheeked girl of 18, was rowing. The other, short and rather chubby, now and again lifted a pocket net of wire screening and shaking a score or more of slimy, snapping creatures into one corner of it, gave a dexterous twist and neatly dropped the squirming mass into a tin bucket. Both girls had the clear, ruddy complexion which comes from clean living and frequent sallies into the out of doors. Lucile Tucker, the tall one of curly hair, was by nature a student. Her cousin, Marian Norton, had been born for action and adventure, and was something of an artist as well. "Look!" exclaimed Lucile suddenly. "What's that out at the entrance of the bay?" "A bit of drift or a seal?" "Might be a seal. Watch it bob. It moves, I'd say." Without further comment Lucile lifted a light rifle from the bow and passed it to her cousin. Marian stood with one knee braced on the seat and steadied herself for a shot at the object which continued to rise and fall with the low roll of the sea. Born and reared at Nome on the barren tundra of Alaska, Marian had hunted rabbits, ptarmigan, and even caribou and white wolves with her father in her early teens. She was as steady and sure a shot as most